All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of New Music Friday. This is March 18th, 2022, and this is the show where I give you guys the top 5 Prog headlines for the week, sometimes less, sometimes more, and talk about the channel and what's going on here. And I do it in a live stream version, so if you want to join ever, it's always Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And, if you want to come in and chime in, that's always well appreciated. But otherwise, I'm going to get into the news items and talk about what's happening. I thought it was a little bit light. I was almost considering skipping the show this week, but there was kind of some interesting things that kind of came in, especially kind of last minute. So I thought it was a worthy group of news items that I think it should be a fun show. So Prog headline number 1. I saw that there was a gathering in York with Big Train fans to honor David Longdon, who unfortunately passed away last year. I've covered that quite a bit. Such a sad and sudden passing, and a lot of the fans have kind of struggled to kind of come to terms with it and figure out how to deal with that. And of course, there's still a lot of mourning and feelings about that, and people trying to figure out how to cope with it and such. But it was sounds like it was a good little group meetup to kind of, come together and be able to mourn together and to feel that kind of common camaraderie based on a shared love of the band and shared love of David Longdon and his vocals and such. So the event was attended by the band's founder, Greg Sponton, and his wife, Kathy, and David's partner, Sarah Ewing. Took place at York's Hoptail Lounge, and a visit to the York National Railway Museum, where the assembled passengers gathered in front of the Mallard, the inspiration for the band's much-loved East Coast racer. So really, they kind of scheduled this night, it seems, because it was supposed to be the first night of the tour for their UK tour. But of course that was canceled because of the events of this. But so it's kind of in celebration of that, and just seemed like a really well attended event, and people really appreciated that. So it was a good kind of common experience, and people were moved by the event and the shared feelings that were had. So just wanted to mention that as a huge Big Train fan, that was a notable event that occurred. All right, so number 2 on the Prog headlines list is a new set from Bill Bruford, a complete career collection 6 CD box set called Making a Song and Dance is coming out in April, kind of celebrating the past 50 years of Bill Bruford and his music. One of the most original and innovative drummers across various genres, of course, well known in Prog spaces for his contributions to classic Yes albums and to classic King Crimson records. And so this is kind of a huge multi-disc anthology set that contains some of his best work from across his catalog in several different kind of forms. And it's kind of cool how it's broken up, the different discs of this big set. We have kind of the Collaborator is what's called the first 2 discs, which feature a lot of his work with Yes and King Crimson and even UK. So that's some really cool tracks there. Of course, some legendary stuff like Heart of the Sunrise and You and I, One More Red Nightmare from King Crimson, Starless, Nevermore from UK. So just, a collection of some of the great works. And then the disc 3 and 4 comprise the composing leader, has some of his solo stuff, some Bill Bruford's Earthworks stuff, some more orchestral stuff it looks like. So there's that side of him, and then the special guest on discs 5 and 6, where he guest plays on several different things. Roy Harper, Chris Squire, Al Di Meola, Steve Howe, Mraz, different things he did as a guest player on these different records. So just kind of a cool collection of different things from his catalog, which comes out April 29th. Might be appealing to some people out there who like Bill Bruford and his works. Could be a cool set to kind of collect it. So number 3, kind of something I saw pop up briefly on like Facebook, I believe is where I saw this news pop up, but it kind of sparked an interesting a note of news that I thought was worth mentioning, knowing I have some big Yes fans in the group here. It said Brand X's Chris Clark is going to play keyboards in Jon Anderson's new band, which is going to tour in March 2023. So this is something in the works for next year. So Chris Clark is a newer member who was part of Brand X. Of course, Brand X isn't going anymore because of the passing of one of their founding members, John Goodsall. But they were kind of had a reforming in more recent years, and Chris Clark was a part of that on keyboards, and now it seems like he's joining Jon Anderson, and what sounds like it could be a very interesting collaboration, and could be some fun stuff to be had there. And it sounds like they're going to do a lot of classic Yes material. Anderson says we'll do Close to the Edge, The Gates of Delirium, Awaken, and a bunch of classics. We'll make it sound as much like Yes in the 70s as possible. So that sounds really appealing, a Jon Anderson tour that's really bringing that classic 70s style and some of these big major pieces by the group, with members of different groups that should make for a great backing band for him. So it's Chris Clark and then members from the Band Geeks, which I'm less familiar with, but it sounds like some big Yes fans on board with this kind of project or touring group or whatever you want to call it. And of course, I know some people will be like, well, why didn't he grab some other Yes members or Rick Wakeman or things like that? But I just think it's fun to see them touring and to see some interesting music being played, and could be a cool concert and things to get into. So just wanted to mention that one briefly. Some news that I came across as kind of perusing Facebook and different news prog sites. Number 4, kind of a cool release today. New single from James LaBrie is out called Devil in Drag, and an announcement for his new upcoming album coming out May 20th called Beautiful Shade of Grey. So I've listened to this single, Devil in Drag. It's actually really cool. It doesn't really sound, I expected it to be kind of heavy and more metallic, but it's actually pretty melodic and very like lighter rock kind of acoustic bass, but with a great chorus, and it's just a really strong track. And so I'm really excited to see what comes out of it. I think it's cool when these solo artists can kind of branch out from their main band and sound a bit different and do some more experimental kind of fun things. But it sounds like, a lot of people really like LaBrie's solo work. He's done a really good job with it. So this is an album that sounds like it's been in the making for quite some time. But it sounds like it's going to be a good one. He's collaborating with I believe it's a bassist, Paul Logue, who was part of the UK melodic metal outfit Eden's Curse. They kind of formed a close friendship and have really collaborated on this together. And so, of course, they're going to be joined by Marco Svogli, who's been on LaBrie's solo albums before, playing lead and solo guitars. And then Eden's Curse keyboardist Christian Polkinen is playing on the record, so that's going to be cool. And then James LaBrie's son Chance is going to be playing the drums, so kind of a cool makes of different people, a hodgepodge of different members there. But it sounds like it's going to be a cool album that I'm kind of interested to check out, so I wanted to mention it up here on the show. So some really cool stuff going on there, and definitely a single worth checking out. I'll link it in the description. As always, I don't know if it's often viewed or seen in the description, but I always try to put in what I call the weekly top 5, which I did as kind of a separate series, very briefly, where I kind of pull the top 5 singles that I uncovered from the world of prog or related music, and kind of give you a list of those songs. And so always check that out if you're interested in some new music and checking out some cool stuff that's going on. Some of it I mention in the show proper, and some of it are just singles that I link that grabbed my attention throughout the week. So always want to bring attention to that stuff, because that's part of my purpose here, is to bring people into the world of new music that they may not know about. So that's kind of what I want to do. Some other news items. Number 5, which I thought was kind of cool. Prog related news, but kind of veering into some book news, as it were. This is Glasshammer's Steve Babb is releasing his debut Skallagrim novel. So Glasshammer, which is an American-based prog band that I recommend to all lovers of, symphonic prog and similar styles to Yes and Genesis and such. They've had a couple albums in this world, this Skallagrim kind of fantasy world. Steve Babb has really been involved in the writing of that and really excited about this world, and has written kind of a companion series to it, a companion novel that's along that fantasy lines. So it's kind of what he calls a sword and sorcery style novel, but with a lot of different influences from like Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, George MacDonald, and Lord Dunsany as inspiration. So definitely has some of those high fantasy vibes. And Glasshammer is going to be doing a new album for the third album in this set in this world. So the premise of the book that Steve Babb kind of delivers here, it says, how would you feel if you woke up in the middle of a fight for your life with only the vaguest idea of who you are? You're about to be slain by an angry mob of cutthroats, and the love of your life is being kidnapped right before your eyes. Strange, you can't remember her name. Looks like someone has stolen your memory too. That's how Skallagrim begins his epic saga. And though he will wield a sentient, screaming sword that falls from the sky, and mysterious allies come to his aid, ultimately, Skallagrim must endure a nightmare journey alone. His quest to find the girl and kill the sorceress fiend that stole her. Driving him on is the certain knowledge that he only has 4 days to rescue his love before she dies. To make matters worse, he must cross a ghoul-haunted, demon-infested wilderness to find her. So the book Skallagrim in the Vales of Pagerna is available in paperback, hardcover, and as an ebook as well. So if you have kind of the same shared interests as me into fantasy and into these kinds of novels, this could be kind of a cool companion piece to kind of a traditional prog band. So thought that was kind of neat. So I thought I'd mention it. And then as kind of a bonus item here, Thank You Scientists are announcing a headlining 2022 summer tour. Of course, I love Thank You Scientists, one of my favorite groups from New Jersey, a prog band, maybe skirts the line between prog and several different genres, jazz and funk and things like that, a little bit of pop influences, but definitely to me some very progressive influences, kind of almost Zappa-esque at times. Definitely do a lot of eclectic, interesting work with a really cool arrangement of instruments, some horns, a violin player. Really cool group that just, to me, gets better and better with each release. I love their last release, Terraformer. Of course, last year they also released an EP called Plague Accommodations. So it sounds like this tour is going to be their first headlining tour in the post-COVID world. So this is their first headlining tour after the big break that bands had because of the COVID-19 pandemic and such. So it sounds pretty cool. They have a couple of support acts as well, Strawberry Girls and Art Thief, which I'm not too familiar with, but sounds like it could be a cool group of artists coming together. Last year, Thank You Scientists announced that they're on a new kind of independent label called Flying Jangus Records. I believe that they formed to release their albums on. And after this tour, sounds like they're going to kind of head into the studio to record their next full-length album. So some cool news in the camp of Thank You Scientists. So their tour runs from basically throughout the month of June, starting in Richmond, Virginia, and moving all the way to Brooklyn, New York, and hitting a bunch of spots in the middle. They're coming close to me in Pomona, California on June 10th, so another concert to consider. I've been really looking at different concerts and looking at possibly attending some of them. I bought a couple tickets to some different things, so it should be kind of fun to see what happens from there. So those are kind of the main headlines that I saw. Kind of one thing I kind of wanted to mention as an extra item isn't really prog related, but is kind of something big in the music world, at least, is this kind of news about Dolly Parton and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominated a bunch of artists for their next slate of inductees. I guess they release a bunch of nominees and then people kind of vote on who should actually be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Dolly Parton was on the list and is actually, I think, polling pretty well and doing really well on the list there based on the votes that are being cast. And she kind of released a statement that she kind of wanted to withdraw her nomination because she didn't really consider herself a rock and roll artist, and wanted to leave room for some of the other groups that are part of the nominations, and didn't want to take up one of their spots. Now, it doesn't sound like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are really going to honor her request. I think she's still part of the ballot and still being considered, but it was just kind of an interesting move for Dolly Parton, and has brought up some things that people kind of discuss about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, of like, is it misnamed? Because they keep adding in artists that you wouldn't traditionally think of as rock artists. Of course, a lot of country artists are in there, including Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, Chet Atkins, different artists. There's been some rappers and some different hip hop artists as well inducted, like Run DMC, Grandmaster Flash, NWA. So, there's been a lot of question of like, is it really Rock and Roll Hall of Fame based on the artists they choose? And they're overlooking other prominent rock bands in favor of some of these artists from different genres. Some people argue that, well, rock is kind of where things are based from, and all of these genres kind of take influence from rock and roll. And some people consider, maybe it should change their name to either just like Music Hall of Fame or like Pop Music Hall of Fame or something along those lines, since basically they're picking popular acts that have good careers and big legacies. So I just thought I'd mention that as kind of an interesting item that I came across. My feelings on it, I don't really bother too much with like who deserves to be in and not. I don't really follow it too closely. Of course, Dolly Parton is a legend, so there's no problems in my head of her being part of this kind of celebration of musical artists. But I see her point. If she feels uncomfortable being lumped in with rock and roll and doesn't consider herself a rock and roll artist, I would think her wishes should be respected, of course. So I just thought it was an interesting item, not really prog news related, but just something kind of fun to kind of add here into the mix. So that's basically the news items that I've got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this. As for the channel itself, I kind of, I'll give a brief update on what's been going on lately. This past week, there was kind of a two-shot Marillion videos. I had the Jana Reacts video where we reacted to Marillion's Neverland and talked quite a bit in that video about my thoughts about Marillion and kind of my journey with them. It's been a little bit of a strange journey. Just, I've tried to really get into the band. I know there's a lot of love and devoted fans, and I know there's something great there, but I've been struggling to figure it out. But I'm getting there. I'm starting to understand it more, and I think it's sort of a maturity thing. As I'm getting older and more mature and expanding my musical interests and having more patience for certain types of things, I think it's allowing me to have a lot more appreciation for this group. And then I released a review of their latest album, An Hour Before It's Dark, which you can kind of see here above my head. I got the vinyl in this week, and so I really recommend checking out that review. It was a lot of fun to cover that one, and I felt like there was a lot to talk about because it's very deep. There's a lot of great lyrical content, and the music is just excellent. So definitely one of the highlights of the year so far. Just a great release that all prog fans should check out, I would say. So that's basically what happened this past week. We have a really epic Jana Reacts coming out this Sunday that I think a lot of you will be really excited about. Don't want to spoil it too hard, but it's going to be a good one. And then we're gonna release our next classic albums show, covering Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and we're doing something a little different with the format, kind of including possibly a little bit of a reaction as well for those people who like the Jana Reacts style reactions. So it's going to be kind of an interesting hybrid, and we'll see if it works or not, but that's kind of the plan for this week. And then the following week is when I'm going to cover a bunch of new albums that have been coming out lately. So that's basically what's on the list for upcoming. So hopefully you guys are doing well out there. I'm grateful for those who watched in real time and those who click on the video later. And hopefully you're doing well out there and enjoying the music. So thank you guys so much. And I'll catch you guys in another video, hopefully. So thank you guys for your support. I'm very appreciative. It's been a good week for the channel. So I'm grateful for you guys. So thanks, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.